Today, we're going to talk about social media basics. And like I said, my name is Amy, and I have Stephanie here with me that will present as well. The question we posed is, does size really matter, right? And when we're talking about size, we're talking about followers, which is the thing that most people think about first when they think about social media. How many people are following you? What's the size of your social following? And I wanted to throw this out there. Last year in 2019, there was a story about this Instagram influencer who had 2 million followers and decided to start her own t-shirt line and could not sell the minimum of 36 t-shirts that she needed to sell for whatever company was sponsoring her. She could not get to that. I don't know what she ended up selling, but she couldn't make the 36, which seems pretty ridiculous and horrible. But this article made it seem like this is not some kind of anomaly or outlier. This is happening really everywhere you turn, that sometimes people are, whether they're gaining the followers in a real way or if it's a nefarious way, they're focused so much on that number, but they're not actually focused on what can that number do for you and how can I create a more engaged and interested following so that they will actually do what I ask them to do or buy what I'm looking to sell. And so this is just, the main point that we want to go today, which is as small business owners, don't focus solely on your following. It is important, but don't focus solely on your following and then overlook a lot of the other things where social media can help you grow your business. And what we will cover today are 3 things. Again, if you've joined us for any of our previous webinars, we like to keep it in threes, keep it very simple so that you can remember what we've covered here today. And what we'll talk about is going to be followers versus engagement, which are really the 2 things that you probably hear a lot about, no matter which social channel you may be focused on. You hear those 2 terms. We're going to talk about social media and lead generation, and then we're going to finish up with social media in today, right, in the COVID-19 world, and how have things changed and what should you be on the lookout for. I'm going to start with the first piece on followers versus engagement. Like I mentioned before, it's important that you think about both. So it's certainly not one or the other. It's a balancing act, right? If you had to, absolutely pick one, engagement will probably be the more important one, but you do want to focus on both if you can. So as a lot of times it may be hard to think of examples as a business owner, but if you think about it as a consumer, if you were looking at a business that maybe you never heard of and you went to their, whether it's Twitter or Instagram or whatever, and you saw that they had 25 followers, you probably aren't going to put that much stock into them. You might not actually buy from them, especially if they've been around for a while or if they've been on social media for a while. So in a sense, the number of followers does make a difference because it's what people see first. It's right there and, at the top of the page of how many people follow you. So it does make a difference. And our point today is really just don't make it the only thing that you focus on. And so the first point is really around perception or reality. And hopefully this link works, but we saw this tweet very recently. Stephanie actually saw this. And it's just this picture of a, bed, so to speak, on the floor, no mattress though, I don't think, just some blankets and some pillows. And the caption says, "Cozy spaces and dreamy natural light." And if you think about this, if you just glance at it, like most of us, we're not on Twitter for that long, we're not on social media for that long, we're just glancing, you might say to yourself, "Ooh, that looks really comfortable," or whatever. But if you were to think, maybe if it wasn't so light, maybe it feels dark. Or maybe if you thought about a homeless person and they only have a pillow and a blanket, what's the reality behind this photo? Is this just a broke person who couldn't make their rent? You know what I mean? Or is this some rich person who just wants to experiment sleeping on the floor, right? So thinking about what is the perception that you're giving out to people versus what your reality is. The biggest thing to remember for social media as a business person is to be authentic, right? You don't want to play like a gotcha game with people and show things that aren't really happening in your business or happening in your life. You want to try your best to be authentic because people are not spending too much time looking at individual posts or individual pictures. So making sure that whatever perception people get of you is the one you want them to have. And so it's always kind of balancing that perception of reality. The second point is knowing your audience. And again, this comes back to balancing followers and engagement. Having 2 million followers, that sounds phenomenal. And you know, any one of us would probably pay money to have that. But if your followers aren't engaged, then what does that really mean? So know who's following you, know what information, Stephanie will talk a little bit more in detail about this, but know what information they want to see. What do they want to hear from you? What is it about you that they like? What kinds of things should you be posting? So make sure you know your audience. And if you're a business, make sure you know what type of audience you should have. You certainly don't want your social media audience to be significantly different from the people who buy from you, because then you're sending out one message on social and then one message actually, you know, going back to what that reality is. So know who your audience is. And the engagement, if you put focus on that, you can really earn trust and earn relationship and build relationships, I should say. And if you've ever heard people say, you know, people buy from people they trust, people buy from people that they like. It's very true. People are much more likely to pay money for services with somebody that they feel good about spending money with, somebody that they know personally, somebody that was referred to them. And having 2 million followers does not necessarily mean people trust you, but engaging with your followers, even if you don't have that many, having great conversations with them, that's going to build up trust and build up the relationships that you have. And then that will lead to, hopefully lead to down the road business, you know, lead generation, et cetera. So again, just to recap, it's really important to balance thinking about your followers and thinking about engagement. Both are very important. We believe engagement is a little bit more important, but it doesn't mean you have to choose one over the other. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Stephanie and she's going to take on the next topic.
So on this one, we said, do you have a lot of followers, but are you still broke? So I've shared this story before with Amy, but I met an influencer years ago, an amazing influencer who's doing some incredible things. She had over 1 million followers on social media, but the only thing was she said she had less than $5 in her bank account. And so for me, I'm thinking like, wow, how can you have so many followers, but still not be able to convert those followers into finances? And she just really didn't know who her audience was. And so what we first did, we did a deep dive into her analytics. Now the analytics should be used as your friend. Your analytics, especially on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, not so much on LinkedIn, they actually tell you who your audience is from what their spending habits are to where they live, to what their income is, to what their jobs are, what their hobbies are, their interests, and so forth. So utilize that analytic information to be able to determine who exactly your following is, but then also what it is they want to hear from you. Next, that allows you to share the right content. So let's say, for instance, if you say, hey, I'm a beauty influencer. Well, if you go through your analytics and you realize none of your audience actually likes beauty products, or in fact, they're just really big sports fans and they want to hear more things about sports from you, then maybe you should try to incorporate some of your likes into sports to ensure that you're creating content that feels authentic, but most of all, that is targeting to the people who are already following you. Because the last thing you want to do is you don't want to have this huge following and then they end up leaving because you're not talking about things that they care about. Next, I really recommend contests and giveaways. So this can look different for different people. So I'll give an example of a client that I had who was a wedding planner / love expert. We decided to partner with Hilton Hotel, which was not as complicated as you would think. Sometimes if you have a decent following, or at least you can narrow down exactly who your audience is and share those analytics with, you know, a potential partner, then they'll say, hey, I see an opportunity for us to partner. I think this is great. And so we partnered with Hilton for Valentine's Day to share what's the craziest thing you've done for love. And so not only were her followers able to send us content for the contest, it gave us content to be able to reuse on our social media platforms so that we weren't always recreating the wheel. So contests are great because everyone loves free things, right? But then most of all, it helps you engage with your audience in an amazing way, while also partnering with other brands who are out there who are looking to increase their visibility with your target audience. So it helps you build that long-lasting relationship with other brands, as well as your current customer base. And what I often tell people too, because they often fear that whenever they are doing contests and giveaways, that people will just come to them just for the contests and giveaways. So I will say, do not get in the habit of doing them all the time, but do them enough that will keep people guessing and wanting to come back for more. Because at the end of the day, we're not on social media to make ourselves look good, which is what so many brands make the mistake of doing. But more than anything, we are there to be a source of information, but then also be a place where our fans and our followers can engage with us the most. I just want to share an interesting story first. So Amy and I actually talked about this earlier. I know that we are going through this pandemic and it is really sad. However, there have been so many brands out there who have literally been pandering to the fact that we're going through a pandemic. So for instance, you may see a commercial with Pepsi saying, I know these times are hard, but go buy a Pepsi. Well, I was going to go buy a Pepsi anyway, so I don't need to be reminded that the coronavirus is also here. Or, my brother gave an example a few weeks ago about State Farm. Before they decided to forgive us of our premiums, they put out a commercial saying, we know these times are hard, but like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. And when he said it, it made me take a step back and say, like, wait a second, you're right. These are all things that I already know. I don't need them to talk to me about the coronavirus. I want to hear from, true thought leaders or people who really have something to say. And so, and then I'll turn over to Amy. But one thing that I do want to say, and when you're doing social media in a COVID-19 world, just make sure that you're being authentic. Like, it's fine to care, but at the end of the day, if you don't have anything that makes sense to say during this time, maybe you should try to shy away from the topic altogether, because at the end of the day, you don't want to seem as if you're a brand that's simply being opportunistic and that you're really just trying to take advantage of people during this time.
Yeah, I certainly agree with all of that. And the other part I would add is, this goes a little bit into how to stand out. If you turn on any news channel, all you'll hear is, information about COVID-19. So if you do have something to post, how can it be different, or what's special about it? Because you may just be repeating, something that someone else has said. And even though this is a tough time for most people, not everyone wants to be inundated with this negative news all the time. So if you have interesting things that are non-COVID related that you can share, you should do that. Again, it comes back to what Stephanie was saying. Be authentic, stay true to your brand. So whatever it is that you're offering or selling, figure out how to make that work, even in a time where, yes, more people are on social media now, but not everybody wants to just hear about, about this pandemic. I think the second point is being, avoid being insensitive and tone deaf. I think that's a struggle a little bit, because you want to share things and post things that are more business focused. And in our case, marketing information is what we post about, but you don't want to be insensitive. For example, showing pictures. We take a lot of care in the pictures that we post. Are we posting a picture? Just yesterday, actually, I wanted to make a post about networking. And the picture I saw at first that I liked was actually an event, and there were like 50 people there. And then I was like, okay, that's not going to be relatable right now. So I needed to go find something else. But it's just really being cautious and being careful about what you post. Not to say that you don't have to post about, that you shouldn't post about what's going on in your business, but try to be sensitive to the people who have maybe lost their jobs, or who can't actually, work from home, maybe the grocery store workers and things like that. Don't rub it in, don't make them feel bad because they're looking at something you're posting. So it does make a difference. I think you can still be authentic and still align with your brand, but just make sure you're thinking about some of the feelings of people that might see what you've posted, and making sure you don't come across as insensitive. And then the last thing is really just being helpful and relevant. I think this goes along with, standing out. If you are going to post something about COVID, make sure it's something that's helpful. Again, not just reposting something that someone else is putting. Make sure it's helpful to your audience, going back to knowing who your audience is, but also relevant to your business and your audience. So you don't want to throw something out and, from left field where it's just nothing to do with your business and you're just posting it. So try to just take a little more care. I think that's the other thing Stephanie and I were talking about, is how many people schedule posts, which we do, we do that as well, but not going back into it and kind of looking at what you have coming up and making sure that it's relevant, helpful, it's not insensitive, is a huge mistake. So it doesn't mean that you can't still do the things you've been doing. Just make sure what you're putting out there with your brand's name on it or your personal name on it is not insensitive to people who might be viewing the information. And this, obviously, COVID is what's happening right now, but it really goes with any type of tragic situation that may happen in the world, or any type of, negative situation that may happen in the world. We want to be pretty sensitive of that.
Yeah.
And those are
like
kind of the main points. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
All right. I just wanted to share this really quick. So I know lots of people have actually asked me what kind of content can you share on social media that could be relevant. And I just wanted to throw out a couple of ideas for you. So if you are a hairstylist, maybe a relevant the content you make and share is how to dye your hair at home, or how to flat iron your hair whenever you can't go to a beautician, or how to give myself a shape up if you're a barber, or if you're a church, how do I live stream my church services? Or if you are a cleaning service, maybe, you're sharing content on, what supplies can you use around your house in order to get your house spick and span, or what are the best cleaning supplies for me to use when protecting and fighting against the coronavirus, that sort of thing. So you don't necessarily have to target coronavirus specifically, but the thing that you're not able to do, maybe, providing DIY tips for your audience to be able to do those things, especially if you're a service-based business, because at some point we are going to go back into the real world, and you want to make sure that your target audience, they come to you and they say, hey, you provided so much information to me during the coronavirus. Now I'm ready to buy from you because I trust you. So just wanted to share those few ideas.
Yeah, I think it's a great point, and it's really one of the reasons why we're doing the webinar series that we're doing, because we wanted to figure out a way that we could quote unquote give back to people who certainly, like I said, we want to stick with free things, that you can do yourself without having to hire somebody. And so that certainly was a big reason why we started when we started. It's like, what can we do with our skills and our backgrounds to share information, try to be as helpful as we can? And that certainly was a driver behind why we're doing it now, because so many people budgets are, if you're able to stay in business, which is wonderful, your budget might not be what it used to be, especially when it comes to marketing. And so trying to figure out how can people be creative, what advice can we offer like we're doing now, so that people can maybe make some small tweaks or small changes to their marketing. So it's an excellent point there.